Hello, we're back. I apologize for the inconveniences. Um, yeah. Thank you so much for being so patient and staying here with me. So we were talking about this bird, this copeton. That's how we call it in Colombia. I saw someone call it chingolo. Is that how you call it in? Is it in Argentina? Mm, all right. So I was showing you an example and I wanted to talk about this example of how to get the proportion right once we did the whole activity of deconstructed the image and simplified it in basic figures. Because sometimes we can do that. Let me. Okay, so I'm using a tracing paper, so I'm not going on top of the actual drawing. So yeah, we can see the things that I was telling you about shape and I was telling you about proportion. We already have these point lines that we use based on the length of the head, and then we were able to have this and understand that this line outside was a little bit too big. Mm. And we were only missing the tail. Okay. I use it from here. It goes until here. Yeah, I think the size of the tail is pretty close. And then we just have to work from there with the shapes that we have on the inside. So I'm just gonna use all these marks that we have. So in here we had the circle. And in here we have the tail. And yeah, maybe we can work on this angle to be a little bit higher. Because it's not an horizontal line, it goes a bit more like this. Same happens here. So it goes a little bit more diagonal. And like okay, in here I have the wing of this side. Maybe I could have put the other one in. Alright, then we can already see the difference between this one and this one. And what we did was not a lot of corrections. I think maybe also the placement of the wing and this angle that we have here was too rounded. So once we put it in a diagonal here, then we could understand it better. And once we cut the extra body that we had on the back of the bird, then it all came together already in a shape that makes more sense. So this is what I was the beginning of the previous class that we had, that we were talking about sketches. Sometimes when you do your first sketch, maybe you don't get the proportion right, and then you have to do it again. Sometimes it takes us a while to understand what's happening with our specimen, with our animal, and that's completely all right, because this is just the way that we're approaching the animal. And then I'm gonna work on the head again. Maybe this upper part is too pointy. Not too much though. Okay, when we simplify the image and the shape of the head, we did just a triangle, no? We did something like this, and we had our beak, maybe something like this. And this is a great way to simplify and to understand in the beginning what's happening. But if we take a closer look at it, we realize that the head is having, we're not looking at the bird exactly on its profile. We're looking at the bird maybe on a 3/4 look. So then this is going to be a little bit like that. And how do we notice this? When we look at our reference, we see that the beak is not completely starting on the edge, but a little bit more inwards. If we were looking at the bird completely on its profile, it would start, this initial point would be on the edge of the head. So that's how we know the initial point of the beak, both up and down. You can see how it goes all the way in the head. And then that's already giving us a lot of information that the animal is looking to us. And then the eye is not exactly in the middle. If you see here the eye, maybe I think it has to go more on the left. So then if this has an angle like that, then the eye would go here. Do you see what I mean? So let's fix this head, thinking of this drawing that I did of the pyramid. I'm gonna go deep into the head. So okay, you see the head and you see what this student draw, correct? And the beak is actually pretty good because they did it inside. I think what we can fix is just mainly the position of the eye. If you see the eye is also too high, if we look at our reference and we have the upper part our beak, the eye is almost aligning with that. So our eye starts here, and at the end of the eye we still have a couple, like a distance to it. I would say maybe starts here. So I would say roughly our eye is gonna come here. So let's see, we have this. Okay, now I'm thinking that the beak can be maybe a bit thicker also. And then we have all this white part underneath, all our neck, and from here we have our chest going. So this exercise is just to show you that this exercise is just to show you that with a little bit of traces we can already understand way more about proportion, about shape. And then if you also had an exercise that looked pretty close but you felt that had some things that could be improved, then doing it with a tracing paper on top and then just going all over your shapes, going all over your measurements is something that's going to help you guys a lot. What can we do with this? Because it's already not on the paper, right? What we can do is trace it back. I'm gonna show a little bit of the pause here so we can trace it to another paper. So we have this paw coming from here. And this one goes from here. Right, that's more or less what we have. And what I'm gonna do now, is that I'm gonna trace it with a fine liner. And this is just personal decision that I do. I do it with a fine liner because then I'm gonna trace it, I'm gonna put graphite on the other side and I don't wanna lose the initial points. So I want to be able to see it later. I'm gonna do this real quick. It doesn't have to be perfect also. This is really just to trace it down to another paper so we can keep working on it. And on that one we can also correct all the things we want to correct regarding, yeah, again, shape, proportion. If we realize we have something that's odd again, we can go ahead and change it. But I want to show you how to pass your sketch, how we're gonna do to trace it in another paper. Alright. Then I have, this was my initial one. This one was the one I started with. Or well, my students started with this one. And these are my corrections. And this is the one we're gonna trace in a new paper. So just let me look for a new paper. What are we gonna do with this one? What we're gonna do is that with a quite dark pencil, maybe with a 2B, we're gonna trace it over. Okay, I wanna show you what I'm doing. I grab the sketch that I did, the one that I just traced with fine liner, I turn it, and on the other side I'm gonna apply the graphite. That's what I needed the fine liner, because once I trace it on the other side, it can be very easy for me to lose the lines. So in this way we can be sure that we're not gonna lose them. This is just a pretty useful tracing technique. It's a way to put your drawing in another surface without having it to do it from eye again, which you could, but then you have, it's like repeating the exercise all over again. Then I have a new paper, and this new paper I'm gonna put my tracing drawing here. So you see what I did? I have my fine liner here, and then on this side I trace it with graphite, like this. So now, if I'm gonna use my pencil on the other side, then it's gonna be on the paper. Let me show you how. Now we just use a pencil that was a darker one, so I use a 2B, and now I want to use a harder one. I'm gonna use an HB. Okay, I have it the other way around. Yes, sorry. Yes, alright. Then I go to my HB and I trace it here. I want to apply a little bit of pressure, but not too much because we don't want to leave the trace of the pencil on the paper underneath. But you see how this didn't took us a lot of time. It's actually a process that can be done quite fast. And then you cannot really see it. Let me go over it again. Mm. Okay, yeah, this can happen also sometimes when we don't go hard enough on the pencil on the back side of our sheet. Okay, I'm just gonna erase the one we had and do it again. Okay, I'm using my HB. Let me trace it again. Trying not to put a lot of pressure on it, but enough so we can see the result. We can double check like, oh yeah, that's way better. We can see it way more. I think that's gonna be enough. Then we just go back. I think I'm gonna keep using my 2H. Then I'm gonna go over it again. You know that now that I'm tracing it, I'm realizing that maybe this wind can be a little bit lower. You see? And then that's how we go from this one to this one to this one. Then what can we do on this one? We can go again with the shading so we understand the volume of the figure. And how I was mentioning before, it's very helpful if we go with the darkest part of the image. And you know, the black and white image can help us a lot with this. Then you see maybe more clearly because you're separating the colors from the tone, and then you understand like, okay, I have a big shading here. And I also have a big shading on the wing. Do you see that? On this part of the wing we have a big shading. And then just as we were doing on previous classes, we just play with the pressure that we're applying on the pencil so we can do the smooth transitions. And then we just have to build it from there. Remembering that we have a big shadow on the back of the tail, just because the light comes from the other side. So this part of the bird is gonna have a lot of shadow. And then you go from there. If you feel that there was something that you needed to fix from your drawing, then that's the way you can fix it. That's the way you can reobserve what was happening, and that's the way you can go ahead and start over. As I was telling you last class, drawing is a lot about reobserving and redrawing and reobserving and redrawing. It's pretty much what we do. Because sometimes the more you look at something, the more you find the details that make it special, that make it unique. So then we just have to keep looking at it. And this technique of transpassing a drawing into another piece of paper is something that we're going to be using a lot, something that's going to be super useful. And then I want to show you again. And maybe this is the first sketch that we approach the exercise with. And then maybe we correct it with some tiny detail so we could have this one. That's already a little bit closer to what we were looking for. And I know I talk about a lot about initial stages on this sketching process, but I want to show you the one I was working on last week, and then we can elaborate that one. And then I'll show you how you can increase the details, how you can work on the contrast to make it more realistic. So I'm gonna put this one down. I also want to show you the difference, because I was telling you guys that if you have a big page you should use it. This is the one I was working with. It already looks pretty big. And this is the size my student was working with. I just recommend you to go big, because when you use a bigger format, then that's also gonna help you have the space to draw the details that you wanna draw. We have this face with a crazy amount of details, and then we wanna be able to focus on them. So this is how my exercising is going. My exercise is going. I'm gonna put it a little bit back so you can see it better. Okay, something like this. Right. So this is the one I've been working on. This is the one we started doing on Thursday. And I had the possibility to work a lot on the head. So I did a lot of details on the head. I work on the eye, on the feathers, on the shading that we have on the neck. But I want to elaborate this part with you. The back part that looks kind of complicated because it has a lot of patterns, it has a lot of feathers. We're gonna be working on that. So let me maybe do a zoom on our back. Something like this is good. And what I did was like mapping where the feathers were. If you can see here, we see a lot of spots on our reference that you cannot necessarily read as feathers. But if you think of them as feathers, then that might be easier. So if you see the pattern that I used there, yeah, it's just like these shapes that are gonna help us understand more what's happening. And we have these big feathers that are very clear, and then I also just mapped that so I could understand what was happening. Okay, so I'm gonna start elaborating this. I think it helps to understand all these, the black spots on the feathers. I'm gonna draw that first. Then when we are observing it, we also understand which feather goes on top. And then it has a black spot, and then it has a white spot on all the corner. It can also help to just count the feathers. I see five there. One, two, three. And now that I look at it, I did this. And it's easy to get lost. So you just have to go over one, two, three, four, and five. And then there's a lot of feathers that start like changing direction. And then we have these big ones that are also very much in the shade, so we can darken them. Okay, I'm using an HB, might be too soft for these details. But for sure will help us understand a bit more of what's happening here. Let me go with the 2B. I'm just gonna trace the edge to really understand where one feather is ending and the other one is starting. And you see that also it's gonna give us more information about the volume. Just now I was telling you that there is a big shading on the wing, and you can see that my drawing doesn't have that yet. So we can work on that. I think that this moment it can be a little intimidating that you're gonna lose the guiding lines that you have underneath just because you're doing the shading. But as you can see, I can add my shading and I can still see the lines underneath that are guiding me. And then with our contrast, we're also gonna be able to to separate those feathers that are going in the wind. And then clearly the darkest one that's going kind of like here, still not dark enough. I'm using a 2B for my darkest. But I think maybe I'm gonna have to go darker. We'll see later on. We'll see. So I told you this is also a work of layers. And that already gave us more volume. So let's work on the back, shall we? So I wanna work like on this upper part here. Okay. We just have to figure out what's happening with this. So we're gonna start with this feather that we see very clearly. Think we can go up there because we see that this black spot is already merging there. So it's almost like half of the feather is black and the other half of the feather is this light brown color. So we show the part that is light brown and then we go up to the other one that goes black again. You know, this is all about understanding the patterns that we are seeing. So I feel that the edge of the feather is this light brown. So we can do the black. And this black also goes like cutting in the middle of the feather. So see, if this is a feather, I'm seeing that all the parts outside are light brown and the one in the middle is the black one. Something like this. It's just that sometimes this black can also go larger and then go all the way to the middle. So then you have both sides that you can see they're a bit more clear, not clear but lighter. Is this light brown that we cannot see on the picture, is just like a light gray, but it goes like this. And then if we have a feather here, then I'm gonna do that. If I take it up, then I'm put it black, and then on this side I'm gonna leave it lighter. And that's pretty much how we can maybe make this a bit more understandable. Then when we're just going to the big feathers, this is just looks like the feathers we have on top of the back are small, and then as we go down they start growing longer. So we have this transition here of these feathers that are longer, and then we have the wing feathers that are way longer. But yeah, if it's possible to you to try to understand how the patterns work, then that's gonna make it way easier to draw it. I'm pretty sure it's not the same. If we look at this one and we look at our reference, it's not exactly the same. It's pretty close. And all this we get, well, the study in our specimen. The wing that we have here are more like hovering. They don't change the color that much. They're mostly it almost looks like hair. This is very interesting about birds that they only have feathers, but the texture of the feathers can look very different. If we look at the feathers that is covering on this part of the bird, and we look, for example, at the feathers of the tail, they're gonna be very different. Even the feathers that they have on the head. No, it looks like a little fur, but it's not. And then we see how these, both of them, those sides of the feathers are connected. Right now I'm using a 2B. You can see how we can still use a very dark pencil to create transitions. It doesn't always have to be a hard one. And then while we work on it, we can see how it's starting to get more and more three-dimensionality. And if we look really close at this, I'm gonna try my camera to focus that. We can still see the lines that I was using to understand the volume of it. Those never went away. So that's what I'm telling you, that when you go dark on places like the winds, you don't have to be scared that those details are gonna go away. You're still gonna be able to see them. So let's take a look on this wind. Okay, big zoom in. But just because we're gonna elaborate this, and I want you to appreciate that. When we understand how the light is hitting the feathers, then we're gonna see that when the feather is getting out, like there's one feather on top of the feather on top of the feather. The upper part is darker and the part that is down is gonna be lighter. So we can play with that pretty good here. Okay. So just as we did here, that we did a line, a darker line, to understand where a feather was starting or ending. We're gonna do the same with the wings, with the feathers of the wings. Sometimes you draw and draw and draw and forget to sharpen your pencil, so I'm gonna sharpen mine right now. And then we take the dark, we take it down. If that makes sense, I'm gonna go the gradient down. So we almost try to match that black line that we have, and we smoothly take it down. And then you start seeing how the winds, how the feather of this wind are really catching the light. No, for me that's super exciting. I don't know about you. Okay, maybe at this point it's a whole challenge to keep your line straight. We can get there. Okay, and I think those are all of them. And then we do what I told you. I have my black line. Then I work from it down. Okay, I'm gonna do the HB to do the transitions. We're just trying to make it darker on top of the feather when it's touching the edge of the other feather. And the lower part of the feather is going to be the one that's catching the line because it goes a bit more outward. And I believe in this part we already applied a lot of layers to make it darker. So then it's getting harder to notice. Maybe we're gonna have to jump again to the 2B. Yeah, let's do that. So I can darken this even more. And then again on the one below. As you can see, this is a very simple exercise that's gonna give us already the placement of all the feathers on the wing. All right. Okay, what do I see now? When we merge these two, like the body and the wing, is way darker. Yeah. And we can work on the ones that are a little bit higher here because we didn't do any kind of gradient on it. Works pretty much the same. When it's going under the other feather, then it's just gonna be darker. And up here we have other feathers that are covering, so we can give the texture to that. We go to the next one. I know that when we draw our feathers, we do a straight line, but these feathers, of course, have textures, and sometimes you can see the color underneath in these little lines, and that just helps to give it a bit more credibility. Okay, I'm gonna darken it more because I feel that maybe looks a bit whitish, and it's supposed to be brown, so let's put that tone a bit down. Oh, but okay, I should not forget that. It has, these feathers have like a white spot. So yeah, I can do the rest, tone it down, and leave that white spot. And I was telling you in a previous class that when we work on the transitions from one structure to the other, that's what's gonna make it feel like a unit. So then when I work on the transition of this feather to these feathers here, this part is crucial. Okay. Yeah, maybe we have some lines that are not super straight, but I think we can work with that. Let's step back a little and see. Yeah. So this is how our bird is looking right now. And I think we're pretty close. I think we're pretty close. What can I see here? Maybe we need to darken this part a bit more. Yeah, and even this, maybe at the end is catching the light a bit more. We can leave it like that. Mm. And then if we work on this, we can see this. And like these feathers are going in, and they're creating this shadow. We could still darken this more. And then we can go ahead and work on the tail, no? Yeah, I feel maybe the tail would be the one that's still missing the details. Even though tail is catching a lot of light. So we don't have to darken a lot. Maybe we have to darken this one on the left. And again, the transition from here. And lastly, I think we will have to work on the paws, because we have not done that. Paws are always going to be complicated, let me tell you. And this is how my paws look like right now. They're just sticks. Yeah, and they can start like sticks. It's totally alright. You just have to understand also how the light is hitting them. From the beginning, I can see that this line of the left is darker than the one on the right. And if we just give it a bit more, okay, let's work on the shape first. You have to understand or try to understand how everything is connecting. Like we have this finger on the back that is coming out of here. And we're not gonna think about the wrinkles, we're gonna think about that later. And then the nail, how is it going out? I see a circle here. Then I see the rest of the structure going back. And it goes a bit down, then it goes up again. Something like this maybe. And then same with the one in front. So we kinda lose what's happening because it's beside this structure, this guess is the part of a tree. We have other two going here. Not gonna mind them that much. And we have another one that's also holding on. And pass can be something that we can put a lot of time in. I think they're really challenging. Then you have here the tree trunk. You can also see it a bit here. And it goes something like that. Now we can work on the shading. Okay, so as I told you, this part of the boy is catching more light. So I'm gonna start to darken it from the left side. And this one, the part of the right is the darkest one, and the left is catching the light. We have these two super dark here, and this one left side is catching the light. Would work something like this. And then if we go with the other one, surprisingly is the middle that has more light. When we take a picture in nature, then we can have a lot of different sources of light. Alright, let's step back one more time so we can see to the overall shape. So this would be it. This is our sketch after working on it on 2 different sessions. And I understand that at this point everything is very, very personal and very subjective. Like I could tell you like, no, my sketch is done here. I'm not gonna do anything else. But some people could say like, oh no, I think we can give it more detail. I think we can give it more contrast. I think we can make it more realistic. But that just completely depends on you. I know that, and I notice if I look at things like the face, like the feathers, that we can still go darker. We can still go way darker. But that's up to you. This sketch we were doing just to try to understand the animal we were drawing, because this is not how we're gonna be creating our final illustration. And the next class, that's what we're gonna be doing. So next class, I expect that all of you are already thinking and started looking for the species that you want to be drawing. I'm also giving it a thought because maybe I want to do something challenging and do maybe a type of animal that I haven't drawn before or that I don't draw that often. I really like I really like birds, so I draw birds a lot. I also really like mammals, but if I'm being honest with you, drawing things like lizards or frogs is not something I've done a lot. So maybe I want to try to mix it up and draw that one in this class with you. But I just wanted you to start thinking about it, start looking information about the animal, and if you want, just in a page in your sketchbook, you can start writing down like this is my animal, and they live in this habitat, and they interact with these other animals, or maybe these have this type of diet, and maybe fun facts about your animal that are gonna help you to start this whole research process that we're gonna do on our animals. Also on the website that I left on the chat, you can look for different pictures of the animals, and then you can also do tiny sketches about the position of the animal or what kind of position you would like to use. Or maybe if you find an image that you can see the face of the animal really good, you can be like, oh, I can use this image as a base. I can use this one as a really good reference for my face. But then the position that you want maybe is different, and then you find another picture for it. That's what we're gonna be doing on the next class with all the pictures that we find of our species. We wanna combine all of them to come together with only one illustration. So yeah, just wanted you all to remind you as well that Saturday we're gonna be answering questions that you've been having during the class with the exercises that we've been doing. So I just encourage you to use the chat and tell me your questions, and then on Saturday, every Saturday, we're gonna be here solving those questions to you. I think this was very important class to understand also things that I was mentioning about proportion, about the colors, about different tones. And yeah, I just really like to interact with you and see what you're doing and be able to comment on those all those exercises that you're also doing with me on this class. And yeah, that'll be all for today. I'm really looking forward for next class because next class is gonna be the beginning of more of an individual work, and that's very interesting. We can all see what other students on the class are working on, and on Saturday when we're seeing them, then we can always comment on our colleagues' work. So yeah, once again, I just want to thank you all for coming to this class. And yeah, it was a wonderful first week. I hope to see you all next class. I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.